Hey, welcome back to the food forest. It's been a bit. I've been super busy. Anyone knows this time of season, there's so much to do. Tidying the gardens up, pruning the trees, getting plans for next year. We're adding more raised garden beds this year, getting our self-sufficiency and resiliency dialed in even further so we can grow even more food in case there's disruptions in the future. Super busy. Sorry, it has been a couple weeks since my last videos and about 2 weeks between each of them. We're gonna start making more regular videos as we start getting into the season. But you can see stuff's mostly still sleeping here. It's just waking up. It's been an abnormally cool April. It was actually warmer in February than it was in April. Super weird year. I really do hope that we get fruit. Who knows? Maybe we won't get any fruit. But this is the challenges that we're facing now. Today's video, I wanted to show you something that I observed on my land. I think now is a really important time of the season to go out and observe your land, especially if you do have any snow melt. I don't think a lot of people do, but if you did have any snow melt, watch where that water wants to flow. Capture, stop, hold those energy sources before they leave your land. Super important in site planning and design and management. But right now I wanted to show you something that I did observe, and it's about how to mulch trees, how to not mulch trees, and something that can and will kill your trees if you don't take this advice seriously enough. Okay, so we're actually going to start right at that tip to save your trees, and we'll just head over there. And there's Harry. Harry's actually outside and exploring. You can see this dog trail. This is where the dogs run back and forth, and they've kind of cut a trail right through some trees. I'd set the path to be winding. The dogs are telling me they're gonna just plow over whatever anyways. But this is the tree I wanted to show you, and it's actually a maple that was planted 30 years ago by the owners, and they mulch volcanoed the tree. So the proper way to mulch a tree when you plant it is actually a ring around it. You want a donut. You want the first couple inches, like when you're planting a brand new tree, maybe like 3 or 4 inches away from the tree, to actually be bare dirt. And then you want a nice maybe 6 inches to even a foot around the tree in a circle. But what you don't want to do is pile mulch up in a volcano around the tree. And the reason for that is that you'll get boring insects that overwinter in the mulch. And that's the main thing that people think about. But the second thing that will happen is your tree might root into it. I had dug away a lot of the grass, and I actually had to dig down like 3 or 4 inches to get down this level. I can still go further because you actually want to see the root flare. You want to see where the tree starts to thicken and branch out. That's called the root flare. You want that exposed a little bit. So I could go even further. Actually, you can kind of see it here. You can see here, you got a little bit of that coming out. So this is a pretty good depth for here for the tree. But you can see what actually happened is these roots are wrapping around the tree, and these roots are solid. This is not twigs that I laid down. These are roots that had rooted into the mulch volcano. And what these roots will actually do is they'll girdle the tree, and they'll wrap around, and they'll kill the tree completely. So what we actually have to do is fix that now, because this tree is doomed if we leave it like this. Okay, so we're gonna go fix this, and ignore the jammy pants. I just got home from a road trip, and we're gonna do this on the fly with jammy pants on. This one I might need bigger. And you want to get all of them. Some on the back here. Okay, so is that good for the tree? Absolutely not. I might have just cut out 10-15% of the total root mass of this tree and kind of intercepted and broke it. Probably not. I mean, this tree is actually quite a bit bigger, so maybe 5%. But if your tree is like 5 years old, you could be cutting out a big section of the roots to fix it. So what you really want to do is make sure that when you plant your tree, you mulch it properly, and you don't mulch volcano up the side of the tree. You leave an area bare so that you don't get any kind of circling roots, because those roots will girdle and kill your tree and take it right out. Okay, so now here I'll just show you, here's a stone fruit tree, a peach tree that I pruned, and this one was doing okay. I kind of liked the growth. I'd set it up when it first started, and we actually made a belt line cut here, and we cut it here. You can see that actually this is getting a little tight. It's growing a little bit. Always watch out for these tags, and you don't want them girdling your tree. I usually slide them up and put them on a branch instead of right on the trunk of the tree. But you can see this was the first cut of the tree when we first got it. We cut it off here because we had a nice growth here and here to kind of fan out on the sides. We had another one on the back, but it got eaten by rabbits, so it had to come off. But you can see here, we had some smaller growth here that I cut this year. So these are pruning cuts from this year. And when you cut, you kind of want to cut in a way where you cut across the collar. Try to give you a bit of an example of this. So you want to cut straight across the diameter of the branch, and you want to cut across the collar. You don't want to cut too far into this collar, because when the tree regrows, it'll regrow around it and create a cavity inside that water and other insects can get into. So making decent cuts is really important when you make your pruning cuts. You really want to get a nice cut. You don't want any things that are hanging off. Actually, like this. This is actually a really bad cut. I was in a bit of a rush, so I'll show you my mistakes. This is not a good cut. So you want that a little lower down. It's going to take a long time for the tree to compartmentalize and heal over top of this cut here. So this is actually a poor cut. I'll come back and fix that one. But what you want to do on these cuts is you want to open up the center of the tree. So you want airflow to get in. You want a stone fruit tree to be like a vase, like an open centered vase. So anything that's growing straight up, you cut out, because that's going to just sap out the water out of the tree. They call them water sprouts. It'll also change the hormones of the tree. It'll change the way that auxin flows through the tree. And I have a video on auxin. So if you look up AUXIN on my videos, you can see a video that talks about the chemistry of the tree and why it's important to do this. So you really want the growth to come out, and then you want to cut it, you know, at another outward facing bud where there's an outward facing branch. So then you continue the growth out this way. And on the peach trees, you want a bit of lateral growth. You don't want these branches to get too long. So I deadheaded some of these, because I don't want the weight of the fruit to break the branch. And this branch could be good to get some more laterals off. You kind of want to set scaffolds up where you have laterals coming off, and then in the future you could have a lateral coming out of one of these and then out of those later on. That's how you keep the growth new, because it'll fruit on new wood, and that's how you avoid what's called lion's tailing a tree, where it's just all dead up here and then all the fruit is kind of at the end of the tree, which I'll show you quickly on another tree, some mistakes that I made when I started. So for example, I would normally want to take this one out because it's kind of more vertical. I'm pushing it apart, but I was really pushing how much I pruned on this tree. So I'm going to keep this one as what's kind of called like a nursery branch. This is not going to be a main scaffold in the future. I'll cut this off probably next year when I get some more further growth opening up the center of the tree. But it's okay to have one of these if you're cutting too much of the tree off. You only really want to cut 25%, 30% of the tree off each year. The tree actually likes that. So you can do that fine. And if you're cutting too much off, leave the odd one of these and maybe kind of push it open with some kind of support like this. You can push it out into an area where you might want to have further growth. So in the future, I might want to cut it off here even and send a growth out this way. I'm gonna have to end this one soon. I do want to show you this lion's tail. I'm gonna have to end it soon because I have to pick my son up from work. If you heard any yelling in the background there, that was my wife saying, "Go get Ben." So I have to go get my son very quickly. But this is the lion's tail that I'm talking about. This is one of the first branches. This is the first tree I ever owned, and I learned a lot of my grafting on this tree and made mistakes on it. So I'm going to show you those mistakes because I think that's the most important thing to show you. But you can see how here, if you look at the angles, I had a nice growth here cutting out to an outward branch, and then cutting out to another outward branch. So I started that off well, but then, you know, anything inward and crossing I would cut out because that's what you're supposed to do. But what ended up happening is as the tree grew and I kept cutting to outward branches, you know, one of them grew really long, and then this one just had a bunch of water shoots out of it. So I was always cutting that off. I never got any lateral branches coming off. And then really the only good branches that were left in terms of technically good branches to keep were at this junction here. And now all the weight of the new growth is out here. You can see that the tree's not putting on any growth down this center whole branch anymore. If I cut this off here, some dormant buds in this might wake up and shoot out. So that might be something I do next year, because I took a lot of growth off of this tree this year to kind of try to fix the shape a bit. But you can see this is like a lion's tail. So you get this big long thing and then a poof at the end of all of the fruit. So all the fruit is here. Because I know that this is going to be a risk for deflection and breaking and cracking, because of the weight on this, it's going to really push this whole branch down, and I could get a crack and a snap right here. So because of that, every single one of these I deadheaded. So you can see any of the fruiting branches I didn't leave very long. I left them really short because I don't want a whole lot of fruit there, and I'll thin it very, very heavily. The rest of the shape of the tree, you can see I left a couple water shoots here, vertical branches, because I was removing so much. This here was a really terrible dying piece, so I cut this whole side off. This came right across here and was over top, probably more dominant and big than these branches here. So I took a lot of mass off with that cut, so I really didn't want to take too much more off of this tree. This is a tree that cracked right here. Cracked right here. It had another set of branches, and it cracked somewhere else, I think up here. And I cut this one off last year, and I think it cracked like part of this branch that was going out there. That cracked, so I cut a lot of that off this year. So this tree cracked a bunch and had a really hard time recovering from that, and it was because I left too much wood on. I didn't cut back these branches enough, and I think you really want to make sure that when you're setting up potential future scaffolds, you don't leave anything much longer than this, because this is going to be a ton of fruit. I'll have to prune some of this off. In the future, I want this to be able to support sideways branches, and I want to get all these, you know, constant junctions and nodes so that I can fill in the space of the tree, the open space, and I want to reach out and fill that, but I don't want to fill it far away from another branch, because that increases the torque and the bending. So you want to really be careful that you keep your scaffolds fairly short, because over the lifetime of a tree, 10 or 20 years, you're going to have a lot of forking and scaffolding that comes off, and you really want the tree to be able to support itself. So that's the one thing I learned doing this. And you can see in the early days, I left branches way too long. This one would have had a branch maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I left almost this whole thing open. And this is just way too long, and it really bent down when it was holding and supporting fruit the year that it did, probably 2 years ago. And because of that, now my junctions off of this are just so far away from the center of the tree that it really causes bending. So this tree, unfortunately, like, it was one of my first trees that I planted. It's one of my favorite trees. But because I was learning my grafting off this tree, unfortunately, it's just going to have a limited lifespan because I was making mistakes. Just like everyone else watching this video, when you start your food forest, you'll probably be making mistakes as well. So on my new fruit trees, I'm keeping, you know, branches much shorter and manageable. I'm keeping the height of the tree a little bit lower each year. This tree here, for example, was almost 10 feet tall, and I've kept it now back down to about 5 feet. And just working on a much better scaffolding preparation for next year. For example, this one here, I could have even cut back more. You know, I'd actually rather cut this here and just forget about all that, just remove it all. Cut this back here so that in the future, this shorter scaffold is going to be much stronger for when this bud comes out and makes the next level of that node for the tree. So I hope this does help people get started on pruning their fruit trees, and you can see, you know, some mistakes that I've made, and some of the newer fruit trees that I'm adding, I'm rectifying those mistakes. And because of that, I think that these trees are going to live a little bit longer and be a little bit healthier and stronger for it in the long run. So thanks for watching. I'll leave you there, and I will see you on the next video.